Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on customs administration of rules of origin under trade agreements. We'll refer it to as CAROTAR. And indeed, thanks for joining in large number. We have a very different audience today. So we have people from trade, supply chain, and imports of very, very large companies. So the background of CAROTAR is that we are facing tensions on our borders. This has leading to strain on our trade relationships. The investments from China have been curtailed. The applications have been banned, etc. So government is tightening its screws on all sorts of import activities. As early as couple of days back, they have issued new notification on MEIS, which was an export incentive scheme, where a significant cap has been put. One per exporter, the maximum benefit which will be available will be 2 crores for the period September to December 2020, which will be a big blow to the large exporters. Similarly, other restrictions have been placed. MEIS will be discontinued from December 2020. So this seems to be the government's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The government is seemingly confining India to itself, making imports more and more difficult, making exports unattractive. Now, coming to the topic in hand, the preferential trade agreements as of now and in future also are likely to be integral part of Indian businesses. These are arrangements or agreements between various sovereigns, various countries, in which various concessions, like in our context, if goods are imported from ASEAN, SAFTA, African countries, etc., significant basic customs duty concessions have been granted. So to a great extent, it's unavoidable. As we go through today's session, we will find that some of you might have heard about this legal maxim lex non causa impossibilia, which means that law cannot expect someone to do impossible thing. But when we see these rules, we'll find that disproportionately high responsibilities have been placed on importers. Similarly, significantly higher powers have been granted to authorities as far as country of origin issues are concerned, and this is likely to open floodgates of litigation in times to come. So for multiple reasons, the validity of CAROTAR itself is questionable. And just for clarity, we'll not be discussing in detail what are country of origin, various parameters, etc. We understand that most of you are aware, and nor will we be discussing any country or FTA specific issues. We'll be generally discussing how these things broadly govern, what regulations have come now, what are expected from importers, and what importers should be doing now. At the end, we'll have live question and answers where you can ask questions. We'll unmute you and we'll answer your question then and there only. With this background, we'll start today's session. So I'm joined by our director, Kulraj. So he will give us the background as to why and how FTAs have evolved, various salient features of that. Yeah, so over to you, Kulraj.
Thank you, Puneet. So before we start the presentation, let us spend some 5 minutes to set the ball rolling. So as it is often said about human beings, the same holds true for countries as well, that countries cannot survive in isolation. They need trade. They need trade to be done with other countries, and they need trading partners for that. Countries have long recognized this requirement of having trading partners and have got into arrangement on a one-on-one basis with countries, or had formed trading blocks wherein they can agree and do arrangements. India, privy to the important concept that trade has to go in and trade has to increase, have got into arrangement with several countries. And as long as back in 1970s, India got arrangement with one of the initial countries in Cuba to set up a trade agreement, wherein it was agreed that the trade flow shall be smooth. Normally, these trade agreements provide for concessions, and one of the key concessions is the leveraging of basic customs duty. They could be basic custom duty upfront exemption, or they could be a phased exemption in that manner. However, the government experience in these trade agreements has been bittersweet. Sweet because trade has increased, and trade has increased significantly over a period of time. Bitter has been because government has now noticed several frauds, several inconsistencies, several issues in following these trade agreements. Therefore, in order to protect the industry, government has time and again brought in something or the other to regulate the transaction, has issued internal instructions to customs department, with none of them working as swiftly as possible as government would have actually deemed. The government recently came up with regulations, the first one being amendment in the Customs Act, and then introduction of Carotar. Carotar in itself requires a significant of importance, significant of attention by all the importers claiming preferential benefit in two manners. One is that it is mandatorily required to be adhered, and if not, it can actually lead to denial of preferential benefits. Having said that, we'll now start with the presentation. As Puneet explained, I'll be covering the background over the free trade agreements, the preferential trade agreements, and Puneet will be explaining about the Carotar. So as mentioned, that trade agreements are arrangement between countries or trading blocs to reduce the trade barriers. The objective is to increase the trade in goods. Benefit is provided by way of customs duty exemptions, BCD. The exemption could be upfront or could be a phased manner. Importantly, whenever the exemption are given upfront, these are normally known as free trade agreements. When an agreement benefit is given on a phased manner, these are called preferential trade. These are called preferential trade agreements, PTAs, wherein overall objective is to get to a free trade zone only. However, it will happen in a phased manner. These trade arrangements, importantly, are governed by rules called rules of origin, wherein they provide for a certificate of origin to be issued. As you mentioned, that India has been a front runner as far as the Asian countries go in setting up these trade agreements. In most of the Asian countries, India has arrangement with. India's arrangement with several African countries in the least developed category. India has agreements with some South Asian countries, so South American countries like Argentina, Chile, etc. The first arrangement was in fact set up as back as 1970s, and currently the government has 16 trade arrangements in place, with almost equal number of trade arrangements with likely to be in pipeline, with government is in negotiation stage. Just to give you an insight how trade has gone on the trade agreement, if you look at the presentation, SAFTA, which is the arrangement with which is arrangement in South Asian countries, had a trade of 7 billion when it started in 2005 and 6. Currently, in 18-19, the trade is around $30 billion. So trade has gone as long as 5 times. With ASEAN, which is the arrangement with Asian countries, the arrangement was the trade was around 43 billion in ninth, and it has gone up to 97 billion in 18-19. Similar is the case with Korea, and similar is the case with Japan, wherein the arrangements has led to a significant increase in trade. Given this background, we'll now understand what is the importance of rules of origin in the trade agreement. Rules of origin provide for the originating criteria based on which the benefits under trade agreement is granted. The government under Section 5 of Custom Tariff Act has empowered itself to make rules to determine rules of origin. Rules of origin have been formed for all the trade agreements that are in place currently. It provides for the basis on which originating criteria will get satisfied. And they also provide for the manner of issuance of certificate of origin, its validation, its verification process, any dispute arising from certification or origin, or etc. Originating criteria is one such concept which is very important to understand. because it is the basis for issuance of a certificate of origin, which is the basis of getting a preferential trade benefit. Originating criteria basically is an understanding that goods have originated into the country from which the exports are happening, and therefore they meet the requirement for these trade benefits to be granted. All these originating criteria are formed under rules of origin only. There are typically two kinds of originating criteria. One is wholly obtained. So therefore, goods which are wholly obtained in that very country would meet the originating criteria. Wholly obtained would typically means plant, animals, minerals. If a product is manufactured through the use of minerals, animals, live animals, and stuff like that, if those goods, if those elements are produced in that very country through an agricultural means, if there are minerals, they are extracted in that countries, all these will meet the criteria of wholly obtained, and therefore eventually they will lead to issuance of certificate of origin for them. If these goods are not wholly obtained, then these goods needs to fulfill certain criteria to be regarded as origin in that country. These would typically mean that the regional value added content in that very country or that very nation should get satisfied. Plus, there has to be a change in tariff item vis-a-vis the input goods. For determining of rules, regional value added content, reference must be given to certain criteria which are specified in rules of origin, which could be accumulation, which would typically mean, let's say we have agreement with Asian agreement with Singapore as well as Malaysia. So the goods can, or the input material can get originate either in Singapore or can get originate in Malaysia, and therefore the processing of goods, let's say, happen in Malaysia, and the processing value condition would get satisfied because there is an accumulation of criteria which gets satisfied between the trading nation, trading blocks. Diminishes would mean that there is a certain specified criteria, a certain specified percentage of input material which will get satisfied even if those are not coming from the originating countries. Let's say the manufacturing happens in China, or manufacturing of input happens in China, but ultimately the processing of finished products happened in Malaysia. Then the rules of origin provide that if the input material is to the extent of 7% or 10% of the FOB value of the finished goods, then we would consider the output material to have satisfied the origin criteria. And there are other criteria like packaging, there are other criteria, processing criteria and stuff like that. So basically each of the rules of origin have certain criteria, certain basis to determine what shall be the originating criteria in that very country. However, more or less all of the rules of origin typically provide certain operations which shall be deemed as not qualifying, which is packaging, which could be simple packaging, labeling, simple assembly, a fixation of two products and resulting in finished products. These will not be allowed, or simple mixing, those will also not be allowed. So if you have those elements, it could never be qualifying, and an originating criteria will get fulfilled. In all such cases, the benefits under trade agreements will not be granted. Just to give an example, let's say talk about Asian. Asian provides that the regional value added content should be at least 35%, and there has to be a 6-digit change in tariff classification between the input product and output product. Likewise is the case for Japan, and likewise is the case for South Korea. SAFTA, however, provides for a value addition of 40%. So therefore, the goods originating from the SAFTA region has to at least see a 40% value addition of FOB value in the manufactured product. However, a change in tariff classification of 4-digit only. Again, basis the rules of origin, those can get under change. However, these normally range between 30 to 40%, with a change in tariff classification between 4 to 6% only. Given this background, what are the issues that currently are there in the rules of origin? As you mentioned, that certificate of origin is the primary document for claiming of preferential benefit under our rules of origin. However, we have the government has often seen that there are unfair trade practices around certificate of origin, and there are certification of origin frauds as well. Typically, one such is transshipment fraud, which is the goods which originate in a typical country, manufactured in one country, get passed through a country which is our trading partner and get imported into India. But you have a certificate of origin from the trading partner, and therefore benefit is availed. So for example, let's say the goods originate from China, but they are passed through South Korea, and South Korean authorities have issued a certificate of origin. There were frauds like that. There were fraud of simple assembly frauds. South Korea, let's say South Korea, we did simple assembly of goods. However, we got a certificate of origin. The goods were imported. Likewise, was the case with Thailand. A lot of frauds were simple assembly frauds. The goods originated from various countries. Simple assembly was done in Thailand. Goods got into India, and with the certificate of origin in place. However, when the information was dig deep, it was found that there was simple assembly and benefits should not be granted. Lastly, and typically there was certificate of origin frauds only, wherein certificate of origin was tampered, was fraudulently issued, certificate of origin signatures were tampered. So all these frauds, government was cognizant about it. All these fraud, government were ensuring that domestic market gets protected, because all these frauds leads to domestic market disturbance only. The goods get into India with zero or a benefited rate of customs duty, and that they get into competition with Indian market. So all these leads to challenges. So there were several transactions, several articles, so some of these we are highlighting, wherein the government recognized that the frauds were happening, and due to which its position in global trade was getting stumbled. This actually lead to government recognizing the fact of regulating the trade arrangements, regulating the or real rules of origin in the trade agreement, which ultimately led to the introduction of Karotar, which is the primary rule for it. So I'll now hand over the baton to Puneet to take us through these new legislative rules and what all the importers have to do with and what shall be the way forward for them. Over to you, Puneet.
Thank you, Kulraj, for giving us the entire background of why Karotar was introduced. And just to add a few things which led to emergence of Karotar is that from an exporting country's perspective, so suppose X country is exporting goods to India, their endeavor is that the maximum exports happen. And for that reason, many times it happened that while issuance of country of origin, due diligence is not applied. But if we see from an Indian importer's perspective, prior to Karotar, they used to have a proper certificate of origin. So once they have a certificate of origin, they used to contend before custom authorities, see, I have a valid certificate of origin. Now you cannot question as to whether the goods have originated in country A or not. And the matters have gone to courts, tribunals, etc. And tribunals, courts have consistently upheld that presence of that certificate of origin is sufficient for an Indian importer to claim the benefit. But at same point of time, there were misuses as well. So this led to emergence of Karotar. So coming to the new framework, how it evolved. So the starting point was in budget 2020 when Section 28 DA was inserted in the Customs Act. August 21, 2020 when Karotar notification has been issued. And September 21 is the D date from which Karotar will become effective. So the government has given exactly 1 month's time to Indian importers to prepare themselves for Karotar. So in the subsequent slides, we'll discuss as to what are the obligations which are coming on Indian importers and whether this time limit of 1 month is sufficient or not. So let's see how presently imports happen. So there's an exporter outside India. He approaches the issuing authority. He obtains a COO. He gives that country of origin certificate to Indian importer and export the goods. The Indian importer used to file bill of entry till now. It used to claim preferential benefit through country of origin certificate. It used to place that certificate to the customs officer and used to get the benefit. So what will change now? So firstly, the Karotar expects that prior to making of imports, the Indian importer should possess certain information, which we'll be discussing subsequently. What are these information? So the first obligation imposed on Indian importer is possession of information. As far as the foreign exporter is concerned, situation will continue to remain same. It will get COO. It will provide COO to Indian importer. Indian importer will import goods. The Indian importer will file bill of entry with the proper officer. Importantly, there are many more informations and declarations which Indian importer has to file in the bill of entry, which we'll be discussing subsequently. And basis such bill of entry, basis the information possessed, the Indian importer will claim benefit of PTA. So the new regulations provide that PTA benefit can be denied in 4 scenarios. One, where COO is incomplete, where COO is altered, where COO has expired, and lastly, where tariff is ineligible. So the first stumbling block in Karotar or Section 28 DA is these 4 scenarios where PTA benefit can be denied. So the Indian importers need to apply a lot of due diligence as to the COO is proper in these aspects. Moving ahead, what information has to be possessed before import of goods? The primary information, description of production process of imported goods. So Indian importer should have information as to how the foreign exporter has produced the goods. Information as to meeting of originating criteria by imported goods. If those are wholly obtained goods, Indian importers should have details of process through which the goods have been obtained. If those are not wholly obtained, which will be likely to be most of the cases, apart from production process involved in originating criteria, details of origin of each originating input material. So an Indian importer needs to know the production process, meeting of originating criteria, as well as origin of each raw material which form part of the goods which are exported to India. It also needs to have information about additional criteria which has been met as per PTA, which led to satisfaction of country of origin, be it de minimis rule, accumulation, cumulation criteria, etc., etc. It also needs to have details whether the goods supplied to India are through direct shipment or back-to-back shipment, etc. So you will see that a lot of things which normally an Indian importer will not have has been asked to be possessed by an Indian importer, which not only are excessive, but highly impractical and maybe impossible in many cases. How an Indian importer will know from where the foreign supplier has procured the raw materials, what is the production process, etc. So while discussing with many clients, we are coming across one thought process from the client that if this is the level of responsibility placed on Indian importers, we will also think as to whether we should claim PTA benefits or not. So the companies are also thinking of foregoing PTA benefits because they find that meeting all these obligations will be almost impossible. These information has to be kept for at least 5 years from date of bill of entry. So again, a very surprising thing that under Customs Act, if any demand has to be raised, the normal period of limitation is 2 years. So unless it's a case of fraud, etc., the customs authorities cannot raise demand beyond 2 years. If there is a fraud, they can go up to 5 years. But here the requirement to keep information is for 5 years. And please keep in mind, whatever we are talking about, this information has to be kept for each part number, each item code, each SKU, etc. And the law requires information to be kept for at least 5 years. Now coming to the bill of entry, what are the additional disclosures to be made? Even though the revised format of bill of entry is yet to come, but the government under section 28DA and Carotar have indicated what all additionally is needed. CEO reference number and date of issuance, details of items, respective tariff notification, these 3 items are already forming part of bill of entry. So the additional declarations are the most important one. The Indian importer declares that imported goods qualify originating criteria. So it means at the time of imports, Indian importer will certify to customs authority. So it will take onus of the foreign exporter that originating criteria has been met. It also will be required to declare which originating criteria is met, whether accumulation principle is applied, whether CO is issued by third country back to back, and lastly, whether the goods are transported directly from country of origin or not. So you'll find even at the bill of entry stage, a lot of information and a lot of onus is getting shifted to the Indian importers. Moving ahead, the verification process, this is also very important, how it will be done. So firstly, we are talking about the verification process at importers end. So firstly, the proper officer should have reasons to believe that originating criteria are not met. Importantly, the rules talk about reasons to believe. So reasons to believe expression has been used in many tax legislations. So he need to have concrete, tangible reasons, which he may not disclose to the Indian importer, but in his records, he need to have strong reasons to believe that an Indian importer is not meeting originating criteria for particular goods. He will request for information as well as supporting documents. So importantly, supporting documents means whatever Indian importer is possessing information, he need to have a backup documents, which can be emails, informations, etc., coming from foreign supplier. Very importantly, the law provides that the Indian importer needs to furnish such information within 10 days. So the law mandates that this information has to be given in 10 days. So this clearly means that unless the importers are making this information documentation ready now only, they cannot furnish this information in 10-day short notice, because many of these things, they need to get information from exporters only. If the proper officer is satisfied, he needs to accept claim and communicate in writing within 15 days. So there's a silver lining that a formal acceptance of claim has to be done within 15 days. If he is not satisfied, then he needs to forward a verification proposal to a nodal officer in CBIC. The nodal officer will make a verification request to issuing authority. Now, as far as issuing authority verification process is concerned, the nodal officer in CBIC, he can make request for verification in 3 situations: where he has a doubt regarding genuineness or authority or certificate of origin, where he believes that country of origin criteria is not met or the claim is invalid, or on random basis. So he has to make a request for verification to issuing authority outside India. Issuing authority needs to respond within 60 days or the period which has been given in the trade agreement. If nodal officer is satisfied, he needs to accept claim within 45 days. If not, then during the pendency of verification, preferential benefit will be suspended. Reasons of suspension needs to be informed to the issuing authority. And if the importer desires, he can furnish the security and get his goods provisionally assessed. He can continue to pay lower duties, etc. But yes, all those assessments will be provisional only. If the preferential claim is rejected before verification request, the situation can be the importer himself relinquishes the claim, or the information provided by importer is insufficient to prove that the goods meet originating criteria. In these situations, claim can be rejected. After verification request, if verification authority fails to respond. So this is very important that if the foreign verification authority is not responding, then also Indian importers' benefit will be denied. Verification authority does not provide information in prescribed manner. So that's also the onus of Indian importer only. And lastly, again, if the information is insufficient to prove that the goods meet originating criteria. So in all these cases, preferential claim can be rejected. The implications of rejection are that the importer needs to pay full customs duty. The provisional assessments will be finalized by subjecting goods to full customs duty. No preferential benefit will be granted. And lastly, once the claim is rejected, then if identical goods are imported from same exporter, then also the preferential benefit can be denied. So we come to the last part of our presentation, which is way forward. So based on section 28 DA and Carotar, what we discussed, we feel that the importers should take following steps. One, collation of documents for imports post September 21, 2020. Indeed, it's a Herculean task for large importers. So they need to arrange the documentation. It's a mandatory, non-negotiable requirement. They can seek professional guidance for collating such information, review of such information, whether it is in line with regulations or not. Another suggestion we have is that going forward, the importer should set up right internal processes so that whoever are their overseas vendors, new vendors, existing vendors, if they start supplying new products, they should upfront get details which are required under Carotar 2020 so that it does not come up as an additional task. And lastly, they should also build an indemnity clause in their contracts with foreign suppliers that in case preferential claim is denied, then they have right to sue, right to recover the denial of customs duty, interest penalties, etc. from foreign suppliers. I know it's very difficult to implement, but yes, it will be also one of the recommendation we have. With this, we come to the end of our presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions live. So you can raise your hands and we'll unmute you and take up your question. So in the control panel, you can raise your hands so that we can identify you and we can take up your questions. Yeah, so we have number of questions. Yeah, so firstly, we are unmuting Mr. Pankaj Garg. Mr. Pankaj Garg, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Mr. Pankaj Garg, There's an option for you to unmute yourself. Okay, we'll proceed. The next hand raise is by Mr. Rajneesh Singh.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rajneesh from White Hennessy. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr.
For this.
Please ask your question.
Thank you very much for this insight into the new Caratar. My question is pertaining to the transshipment, or not even the transshipment, but let's say that India enters into a free trade agreement with a country X, and the goods are produced in that country X, but because of consolidation of goods happening at another country Y as the hub for consolidation purposes, and then the goods are routed through country Y, will the certificate of origin issued by country X be still applicable to claim the benefits under the FTA with country X?
Okay. So, sir, I will just answer your question generically, not in terms of a particular FTA. So, most of these FTAs permit transshipment. They have detailed guidelines that for consolidation purposes, the goods can transship through another country. So as long as their packing, etc., is not undone and they are kept intact, the benefit is available. So to answer your question, it is permissible, but yeah, FTA specific, we need to check.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next, we have Mr. Arvind Kumar Gupta. You need to unmute. Mr. Arvind Kumar Gupta, can you unmute yourself? Mr. Arvind Kumar Gupta, you have an option to unmute yourself. Okay. We'll proceed further. Mr. Narendra Singh.
Yeah, good afternoon, Puneet. Thanks to provide this information. I think this is the hot topic in current situation. So my question is regarding the proving of origin of inputs. Okay, how we what documents we require to proving that goods are the goods inputs are originating in the same country, because any vendor doesn't provide the bill of inputs. So whether we have to obtain bills or whether declaration is sufficient, if a vendor is provide declaration that all goods are fulfill the origin of goods criteria as per our norms.
Yeah. So Mr. Narendra Singh, thanks for your feedback on our webinar. And to answer your question, in our view, a declaration will be sufficient. So if you can get the list of inputs from your foreign supplier and get a declaration from him where each of those inputs has been procured, that will be a sufficient compliance.
Okay, thank you, Puneet.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Narendra. Yeah, Mr. Arvind Kumar Gupta, will you try now?
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, Mr. Gupta, we are able to hear you.
Yes, my question is, when we from India export any goods to any other country, is there any change in the RVC norms?
It's a very interesting question. As of now, there is no change, but yeah, other countries, etc., may also reciprocate like this. But as of now, no change.
So all these changes are for import only.
Right. It's for imports only.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Then we'll go to Mr. Sushil Sharma. Sir, can you unmute yourself, Mr. Sushil Sharma?
Sir, Puneet sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, Sushil ji.
Yeah, thanks, Puneet ji. It's I think a lot of people are saying that hot topic, and I am also saying that it's a hot topic and you have informed as well as very good presentation. And so my one request that if you can forward this presentation to all participants also, so that will be the good one. And second, my question is on that again input side, where you are saying that input need to be verified or input originator, and also you need to give them to authority. So once for one item we take the undertaking from that exporter, that is sufficient, or for each consignment we have to take?
Mr. Sushil, your question is not clear. Is it exporter wise or yeah?
Sorry,
I'm saying that I am importer of air conditioner. So whatever inputs are used in air conditioner, that that by the exporter. So for that declaration by the exporter is one time or consignment wise?
Oh, so it's one time only.
It's a one time.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. But this information before, when we are claiming the FTA benefit from that customs, so then we have to give the information per bill of entry wise declaration.
Sir, I'll clarify again. As far as bill of entry is concerned, whatever fields information is required, that you'll be required to give. As far as information is concerned, for each SKU or item code, etc., you can possess it one time, and that will be sufficient compliance.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Sukhbir. Yeah. Mr. Chandrasekhar Sharma, you have some question. Just one. Okay. No, you can unmute Charanjit Singh. Yeah. Mr. Charanjit Singh, we have unmuted you. You can also unmute Mr. Charanjit Singh. Yes, sir. Hello. Mr. Charanjit Singh. Sir, we have unmuted you. You can ask your question. So one question from Mr. Chandrasekhar Sharma. So we have unmuted you. You can ask your question.
Yeah, Mike. Thank you for this nice presentation, and my special compliments to the first presenter. So I've heard so many times to you, but the first presenter who gave the insight in, the conceptual background of these rules was really great. So
Thank you.
The question is that are these rules in any way related to the imports made under advance authorization, because these are also duty-free imports? So little confusion was coming. Is it to every sort of duty concessions these rules will trigger? Generally, they should not be, but I just had a doubt.
Yeah. So Mr. Chandrasekhar, your understanding is correct. So these have nothing to do with advance authorization, because the goods imported under advance authorization, they are meant for use in export goods. So even if you import those goods from this PTA countries, then also these rules will not trigger.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So thank you everyone once again for joining in large number.
Puneet, just hold on. Sorry, Puneet. There's one question that is there from which has come.
Sure.
That's an important one, and you can answer it. It has come from Gajendra Rawat ji from Honda.
Kulraj, you can take up that question here.
Question is whether we expect this these rules to come into force on 21st of September, or they could be likely extensions. So I think you can give your perspective on it.
Sure. So, sir, with government's seriousness, it is unlikely to be deferred because the government made its intentions clear in the budget only. And now also they have given 1 month's preparation period to the entire industry. But still, many of the large importers and trade associations, they are making representations to the government for extension. The most unfortunate part for government extensions in India is that it comes at the last moment. So before that, we don't have an option except to prepare for that. As of now, extension is unlikely, sir. So thank you everyone for joining in large number. And with this, we come to end of our presentation. Yeah, thanks once again.